Exactly. Nobody's going to be an easy opponent when we get there, but if you're not going against the defending champs, well, that's pretty good. Let's get into it, though. Playing for that spot in our finals and our qualifier for globals. Necrotic Quake gets going.
Yeah, we got mirrored comps again. It looks like it's very interesting that these teams have put in just so much practice on their own, and it is the first cup weekend, but they come up to the same conclusion in terms of what comps they want to be running inside of 2 dungeons back-to-back like this. Oh my gosh, the Inferno just went off on Arcoleth!
Somehow they're alive there. It's going to be a cheat death, but nothing else needs to be committed by team name. Wow, that was incredible.
Another?
Oh my goodness, another cast has gone off.
This has to be intense.
How? Okay, Lepan and Curry and Mikkel and Anda and Igloo are all on the floor now.
You just list their whole team.
Well, I was listing the people that were dying, and as I started listing it, more of them started dying, so had to just keep doing it and read out the whole team name, as it were.
It's... I think the first Arcoleth kick was intentional to go off because they had the barrier down. I'm not so sure about that second one, as the barrier was no longer down.
I doubt that either was intentional. It seems to me that it's hard to find a more high-value kick than Inferno, in terms of just how much damage you're mitigating with that kick button. That is going to be rough for Team Name, as they now are going to be without all of their big cheat death options, and they have to restart this bolstering pull from scratch. I mean, it's hard to call it over just this early into the dungeon, but at this point, Team Name have lost so many minutes because they're going to have to do all the same trash they were going to do already, but instead of being able to do it in one pull, they're going to have to split it up into 2 or 3, and they lost those reses, and they've just lost so much here.
They probably lost something in the magnitude of 5 minutes. They've lost an absolutely insurmountable amount of time just by messing up that first pull. Because, yeah, it's all of that stuff like you were talking about. They also lost the Incinerator, too. Something in the range of 10% enemy forces are gone. Perplexed is now killing off Blightbone with some of this trash that they have off to the side. You see the Anima Exhaust pulsating on that whole entire thing, and they do a great job of dealing with Necrotic. And so if you're on the side of Team Name, you have to just pray for an absolutely massive blunder for Perplexed if you want Team Name to be able to get back into this.
Yeah, the good news is that Incinerator is already low health. It is it is something that does not regenerate its health when you reset it, so that is a little mercy on the side of Team Name that will help them catch a tiny bit back up. But yeah, Perplexed at this point, 20% enemy forces, 1 boss, 5 deaths ahead of where Team Name are at. I mean, that is a huge advantage, but Necrotic Wake is a very volatile dungeon. There are a lot of dangerous pulls left in here, and a lot of them that can be as costly, if not more, if Perplexed were to have something go wrong. So if you're a Team Name fan, that is exactly what you're hoping is going to happen here. You're going to hope that this pull, you're going to hope the next big pull, which is one of the scariest pulls in all of Shadowlands Mythic Plus, right? That big pull onto the Bone Storm guy, that can cause a lot of
Bone
damage.
Reaver.
Especially once you get into the Necropolis as well. That is a place you can lose so much time, especially if pulls where you commit weapons end up not working out, and then you just don't have a weapon when you come back to it.
Team Name's being spawn camped.
Yeah, this
so
is
bad for them.
This is unfortunate over on the right-hand side of the screen here. Team Name all committing their Shadow Melts to try and get out of this one. They will be siphoning this Anima, getting a little bit more powerful, but at this point, we're going to switch our focus here to Perplexed run, as they have, I would say, probably close to 7 minutes of advantage built up in the first 3.5 minutes of this dungeon. Which is an impressive rate. It's an impressive rate of time to build up.
Agree. Oh, Team Name is now engaged Blightbone, but on the big screen, we have Perplexed with those Anima Exhaust pulsing. Yeah, this is one of the most dangerous pulls. This is the one that you were highlighting, the one with the Bone Storm guy. And look at this. All three of their DPS are over 60k, with their tank also at a nice balmy 55k DPS.
Oh, a Shine fighting for that 3rd place spot on the meters, needs to beat the tank or else will be deeply embarrassed. Has done it. Ooh, it was close for a while there, but all 3 DPS players are going to make the top 3 of the damage meter here for Perplexed. They have done a great job of making that pull look so easy, but trust me, it is not an easy pull at all. Most people on the live servers will not pull that mini boss with the pull of that size, and it is still scary even without that.
A Shine quickly calling out, check mini boss damage, nerds. I was at the top.
Yeah, check boss damage.
He's talking about the relevant metrics here. He's not talking about those pad metrics that you guys are all focused on.
Exactly. That's the problem when you put and then you go into this poll, right? And you'd be like, oh, where are you guys now? You know, where's all that damage
Look at me
now? Yeah.
And he also carries all their weapons, so it's just gonna prop him up at overall. He's gonna tell them to check overall after the run.
All right, so Perplexed are going to be moving into the boss now with the, looks like Swag here has deployed a spear, dealing quite a lot of damage. That may in fact have just been a hammer.
It's very hard to tell. The
is.
javelins, so typically you're going to javelin Varuth whenever Varuth hits like the 30 to 40% mark with Amarth, and you're going to line those two things up to be able to execute Varuth and then just deal a considerable amount of damage to Amarth. However, that's something that people do on live realms. With the MDI, it's very so the javelin is capped, and its cap is it's like a pretty steep cap. It's after 5 targets it starts to do reduced damage to any additional targets that are gained. So it's not always the best thing for an MDI style situation. So using it on Executioner and Amarth there does make more sense than just slamming a hammer.
Yeah, getting good spears later in this dungeon, particularly on the last 2 bosses, is really, really valuable. So that requires taking them off of some of these earlier bosses, which, you know, these bosses are scary. They're certainly scary, but it's a little bit less time efficient to be spearing these bosses than to be spearing those kind of phased bosses, right? The second to last boss in this dungeon, every time you spear it, if you can skip one of those hook phases, that's going to save you a lot of time. And the last boss, you know, the shorter you can make that fight, the less total health you have to burn through because the less shields it's casting.
Yeah, and so now Amarth does go down for Perplexed. At the other side, we see team name has dealt with Blightbone, I think.
All right. They're on the board.
It's looking like they've dealt with Blightbone, although I'm not 100% sure. And now Perplexed is making their way into the Necropolis. This is arguably the final pain point of this dungeon for Perplexed. They just need to make sure that their first and second pull in this area is dealt with very clean. And you're going to see Perplexed is going to be grabbing this patrol with this corner pack. And on Bolstering, this is very dangerous. And this is one of the things that they have to commit a bunch of weapons to and use all of their offensive CVs to be able to deal with. And you see Divine sitting at 50k DPS. He's popping one of those anima orbs to be able to silence all the mobs.
A Shine is really the unsung hero of pulls like this because he is going to be doing so much of that priority damage to the big Stitchworks and stuff. In this particular pull, he's also going to be a sung hero because he's fired off one of the weapons, right, and is doing huge overall from that weapon. But in terms of where his class damage is actually going here, it's primarily focused on those priority targets. Swag is going to go down here for Perplex, though. That is, I think, their first death of the series, and... You know, it's not going to cost them too much.
Battle resing.
Yeah, the battle res is going to come out. They're going to stop this Fleshcrafter from getting any more cleaver casts. And they don't have any battle reses now for another 2 minutes, so that will be an important thing. You know, if you were constructing a way that they were going to be able to lose this map, it would certainly involve losing that battle res and then something going horribly awry without killing much of anything in this pull, for instance.
It's so interesting to me that they're playing like they're not 10 minutes ahead right now. That committal of that battle res is them saying, because where Swag would release is just in the Amarth room, and he's one quick angel ride away of getting back into the party. And by committing that battle res, they're saying, we don't need this. We're playing and practicing like this is going to be us in a live match. And you look at Ryson on the screen too. He's mind controlling that one Fleshcrafter, and now you see the boss is starting to do the RP, and he's going to start spawning some more of this trash. They're going to be using this Fleshcrafter later on to be able to do additional damage to the boss and just additional damage to some of the other trash pulls.
No, Swag was targeted by one of them and then ends up rolling around the other way because he had the wrong one kind of in his head as which one was targeting him.
We've been there.
Yeah, that does happen to all of us. Luckily, as a monk, you have more than enough mobility tools there. And like you were saying, that mind control tech is really the primary reason that you do see priests so prevalently in this dungeon. It is so much value to be able to just mind control the Fleshcrafter and have the boss start this gauntlet. And then you get to have that Fleshcrafter for the last 2 bosses. So Perplexed really going to make good use of that. And almost every team we see in this dungeon will be playing a priest for that reason.
Exactly. And It just makes sense that it's the Healing Priest. While Shadow is incredibly good, we've seen Shadow in a few other dungeons. This is a dungeon where you want the Frost Mage as opposed to the Fire Mage, and so Shadow Priest is just slightly less valuable in the exact same way. And Disc brings exactly what you need, whether that be that PI to assist the rest of your party, and at the same time you just need that mind control.
Yeah, that is another nice thing they do is they get to bring your Kyrian buff if your tank doesn't want to play Kyrian.
True.
Not an issue in this dungeon, though, because Divine, delighted to be playing Kyrian Vengeance Demon Hunter, but, you know, in some dungeons the tanks aren't playing stuff that is as interested in being Kyrian, right? Sometimes they want to be a warrior, they want to play Night Fae, that sort of thing instead.
Jack's secretly hoping that anybody will bust out a Holy Priest.
Yeah, the Holy Priest. We've seen what 3 different healing specs so far this tournament.
We've seen the Restoration Shaman. However, we do know that JB during time trials played that Kyrian Restoration Druid, and that may end up making an appearance at some point. It just kind of depends. I think that from what I've understood from how people have explained it, that Kyrian Restoration Druid in that the other side time trial map was just kind of a perfect storm of circumstances. And in addition to that, JB loving that Resto Druid, being able to bust it out with that perfect storm.
Yeah, of course, we haven't seen their team playing this weekend yet because of our new structure, right? We have 24 teams that qualified through our time trials, and only 8 of them are playing this weekend. Another 8 playing next weekend. That's going to include Complexity and JB's team. And then another 8, the last 8, will be on the final weekend, 2 weekends from now. So it's pretty cool. It's pretty exciting new format that means that there's going to be some new teams, all new teams, in fact, every single weekend.
They 5-man melded, dropped that Fleshcrafter out of combat, and reset the bolstering on that whole entire thing. So that's something that we've seen. Okay, we've seen group-wide 5-team melds pretty commonly in the MDI so far, and not this.
Look at the world markers.
Yeah,
I love this.
I wonder who that's directed at and who they're BMing specifically at this current moment.
Yeah, that's got to be the kind of thing where, like, you had one world marker down and somebody missed it, so you put 2 down and they miss it again, and you're like, all right, we're going all out. There's no way.
It's a, oh goodness. It's just a, oh, did they just grab the Fleshcrafter with the hook instead of the boss? That Morbid Fixation is still stuck chasing around
Swag.
Swag.
Take an auto.
This is bad
right,
because they're not going to be able to get Stitch Flesh down. Oh, they're committing weapons to it right now. And look at this. Wolf Disco blinking into position, trying to get that extra hook. But Surgeon Stitch Flesh is going to spawn another Abomination here in just a moment. And this can start to get dicey for Perplexed. They may need to commit some more weapons, and maybe even a Bloodlust if they're not careful.
And they're overlapping Pain Suppression and meta here, the Fell Devastation meta from Divine. So he's going to be very tanky for a little bit. But once those things expire,
another weapon.
There's not going to be too much left. So yeah, they are going to use a lot of stuff here to take out Surgeon Stitch Flesh before it takes them out. That does mean that this last boss will take them a little bit longer than if they'd been able to preserve those weapons. But you know what? They should still be able to get it done. It is going to be a little bit of a slower, in theory, strat, but it absolutely needed to happen with the way that all worked out. So good adaptation from Perplexed as they now move on to this last boss with 2 Tormented Auras active. They are slowed and they are taking extra physical damage right now.
Yeah, and while this is very scary, they do bring that Fleshcrafter with them that is going to help them just do a tremendous amount of damage to Nalthor. Nalthor is absolutely being melted here by using some of those weapons that are in Necrotic Wake with the addition of that Fleshcrafter Cleaver. The Fleshcrafter Cleaver is the best use of that is actually whenever somebody goes down and has to deal with their phase downstairs on that Dark Exile. Ooh, Ryson was able to grab Wolf Disco right before he got gripped by that Dark Exile, allowing him to stay up on top of the platform for 40 seconds. You do see on Wolf Disco's frame that he has that green debuff, and after 40 seconds occurs, he will just die, but it's looking like Nalthor is going to die before Wolf Disco ends up perishing.
Wow, that is a huge time save that Perplexed have done here, and that is an incredibly useful thing if they come up in this match, in this map against another team, but they are done with this series. This is going to be a 2-0 victory for Perplexed in a stunning fashion in Necrotic Wake, sub 15 minutes in this dungeon as well, and they have earned the first ticket to the Global Finals.
They're full of veterans, both of the MDI and of the high key pushing scene, and they're going to need this win, as Ambition will as well, if they hope to make it to our global finals. It's all coming down to this game right now here in Necrotic Wake.
And then we've got big pulls right off the bat here for both teams, and some different compositions as well. Lagbug on the Disc Priest, which is pretty common in this dungeon, but Ambition actually running Ellesmere on the Holy Paladin here as well. And look at the Ashen Hallow as well on this first pull. Incredible extra bit of value from that spec, but that means they won't have the mind control for later. Both teams have done so much trash here into Blightbone. Oh my goodness.
Okay, this is absolutely crazy pull from the get-go by both of these teams. And yeah, a little bit of a difference in comp here. So their Ambition is going to have the advantage of having the higher DPS healer on their side. But Obey Alliance maybe has like the higher DPS combination of the damage dealers, right? So maybe it's not going to give and take it so much in the difference of these compositions. We're going to have to see if it makes a difference later on. But it looks like, so far, Ambition definitely has a little bit more boss DPS. As you can see, Blightbone being quite a bit lower for Ambition, while they just continue to pull trash on top of this boss with those Kyrian orbs that they just picked up from that Goliath.
Both teams are on a world tour here. They started this boss with a bunch of trash, and now they're pulling more trash and the Incinerator onto the final 50% of this boss's health. This is going to be huge, and both teams, I think, are going to come out of this at right around the same time, with right around the same count and progression through the dungeon. So again, just so well matched are these two teams, and the difference in composition is going to be so interesting as well as we keep going through the dungeon. They do both have that priest again for the mind control, yes, so it's just a question of the other stuff around it, whether it's better to have that priest as your healer or on the DPS side of things. Ambition have finished this first boss 6 seconds ahead of where Obey Alliance are at, and both teams have the exact same trash can.
I wonder if we're going to see a difference in strat here, because we know Ambition is skipping past all of this, and it looks like Obey Alliance is not. Obey Alliance is activating that steward, picking up those orbs, and now they're actually doing a pull here. So yeah, definitely a little bit of a difference here. Obey Alliance think that they have another route that might just be faster than the one that we saw from Ambition. Ambition immediately going through, pulling these Marauders with the Necromancers. Actually wonder if this was a mistake. Didn't they usually pull those Marauders with the next pull? I might be mistaken here, actually. Maybe they always did this. I might be wrong. As they're now picking up those Kyrian orbs, or just waiting for the steward to repair the Goliath and then picking up the Kyrian orbs. And they're gonna be gearing up for a huge pull just in a second.
Obey Alliance on a much more standard path through this dungeon, killing off all this trash using those Kyrian Goliath orbs, and they actually still have another Kyrian Goliath they can use, whereas Ambition just skipped one entirely. They need to get all their count from this massive pull, including the skeletal monstrosity here, and they don't have nearly as many resources to deal with this. Ashen Hallow not available for another minute. Sack is going to be used here by Ellesmere. Everybody dropping very low, but instantly topped after that big AoE damage from the monstrosity. They did a really good job of not pushing it through into raging before that finished as well. Obey Alliance, meanwhile, they've started their boss RP, and they are also working on this pull that Ambition did earlier, but they don't need any more count after this one. They'll be able to go right into the boss pretty much.
Yeah, so interesting differences here. Obey Alliance definitely a little bit slower with this pull in particular, because their rogue was activating the boss, so he just now got back to the group. So basically missing one damage dealer on their side, as they're now picking up those Kyrian orbs. They can be using the Kyrian orbs now for possibly Varuth and the boss. I wonder if this is the strategy here, because Ambition dealing with Varuth by himself, but if you have that extra healing from that buff from the orbs, it might actually be possible for Obey Alliance to do the boss and the Tormentor at the same time, and that looks like what they're gonna be doing. So yeah, caught up again for Obey Alliance in a difference in strat here, even pulling the Necromancer too.
This is so sketchy, but they have access to those weapons as well. If they want to send a spear on this, maybe they could, and it would maybe help finish everything off, or maybe they're just going to rely on the Kyrian Goliath orbs, doing a tremendous amount of extra bonus damage and healing there. They've got to be careful as mobs enter that raging threshold. The Power Word Barrier is going to come out, and soon they're going to see the first Army of the Dead as well that needs to be dealt with from the boss. Okay, they've already dealt with that. They're vibing. All right, Obey Alliance making something that is so difficult look so good, and they've actually gained some time here. They've gained some boss damage as a result of all this as well, compared to Ambition, and they're going to be finishing this boss first, unless Ambition really accelerate from here.
Wow, I really like this strategy by Obey Alliance. That is so incredibly smart. Just having this orb damage to be able to not lose a lot of time with Varut, because that was actually the only, like, quote-unquote inefficient pull that Ambition was doing, this Varut, this Tormentor, by himself. But because Amarth does so much AoE damage, they just didn't want to risk pulling it with the boss. But making up for that risk by having those Keyring Orbs just makes so much sense. And now you can see Obey Alliance and Ambition, they have the same trash percentage, so both of them can immediately go up to the Necropolis, but Obey Alliance just dealing with this boss a little bit quicker, still not that far behind. It's a 10 seconds difference on the board now in favor of Obey Alliance.
Yeah, this is going to be so close, but Ambition have an Ashen Hallow. They have the Silver Bullet. The last thing they might need to make a massive pull work out up here. Let's see if they can use it in combination with that depleted Anima Orb. First, though, it's going to be Obey Alliance, and Obey Alliance are also, they are going to pull the entire room. Both teams are going to pull the entire room here. Let's see how this works out. This is so scary. Look at all that trash.
And there's actually a difference in weapons that they still have available. I actually think it's in favor of Obey Alliance. They have 2 Anima Orbs still, one on the Rogue, one on the Skylark, and then they also have 2 Spears left as well still. It looks like they barely used any weapons before this, while Ambition, they did commit one of their orbs previously. So they have 1 less Anima Orb on their side, and you can see that Obey Alliance dealing with this really quickly because of those Anima Orbs that they committed. You can see the Spear is still on the Rogue's back here on Obey Alliance, while Ambition had used their Spear for that pull that they just did.
Yeah, this is going to be very interesting. Obey Alliance still in the lead by a couple of seconds. Ambition are getting started on this trash gauntlet as well. So both teams at a very similar spot in the dungeon. And a lot of it is going to come down to execution here. Ambition have actually pulled this Flesh Crafter into this pull as well to get these extra throw cleavers involved. I don't see Obey Alliances on the screen, so maybe it's still crowd controlled off over to the side right now as they are working now on their last assistance. Ambition making very short work of these 2 mobs as they both enter raging range. Here comes pull 2 though for Ambition, or for Obey Alliance over on the left-hand side, and they actually have that cleaver not CC'd, but they've left it all out at the side so it doesn't accidentally get cleaved down. Ambition, meanwhile, they've actually put their Fleshcrafter into raging range, and now they're going to leave it crowd controlled for a little bit and let it heal back up, but it's going to stay raging. Even though it's healing from the polymorph, the raging effect does not go away when you get back above 30%. It stays on forever unless it gets soothed off.
Yeah, so they're definitely taking advantage of that raging. Obey Alliance doesn't seem to be doing that on their side. They just, actually now they got it into raging range as well. Okay, so they just got it into that pull with that gore grind and managed to get it into raging 2, as they are now engaging that last pack, the Rot Spew, before they get into the last boss. And look at the time! 8 minutes into the dungeon, and they're already about to pull that 3rd boss of the dungeon. This is so quick. Both of these teams are just speeding through this dungeon with 2 different routes, and both of them so close to each other. Obey Alliance still a couple of seconds ahead because of the different kind of route that they were doing with those Kieran Orbs, and it really seems to be paying off so far. We also see the Rogues actually using that shift to make sure they dispel the raging of these Rot Spews to make sure the tanks don't suffer so much from those mutilates and tenderizes.
Yeah, this is such a scary moment here for Obey Alliance, but they have now got this last trash, or the last boss here, the second to last boss rather, is being pulled by them, and they have a spear available for it if they want. So maybe they'll decide to commit it. It's pretty common to see it used on this boss fight. The Ring of Peace there is going to be used to move the Fleshcrafter exactly where they want it, and here comes that meat hook, pulling Surgeon Stitchflesh down. Let's see just how much damage they can burn into this, as Ambition have gotten started with the exact same boss.
Yeah, they used a spear, so Obey Alliance has one spear for this boss that they just committed, and then they have one extra spear on the mage that they still have available for the last boss as well. So many weapons still left, and you can see just how much damage they have. Look at Surge and Stitch, like for Obey Alliance, the boss is just absolutely melting, and it's already down. Less than 10 minutes in the dungeon, and they're already on the way to the last boss with another spear available. This is just an absolutely insane strategy by Obey Alliance. They're just speeding through this dungeon. This is incredible.
They're getting started now with that last boss. Soon that Fleshcrafter will be teleporting up to join them as well. And they now have... Actually, they don't even have Bloodlust available. Bloodlust still 10 seconds away. They used it right at the start of the dungeon, but we've only just passed the 10-minute mark. And my bet is that they will hit that button right when it comes off cooldown. But Ambition are hot on their heels. They are getting started with this boss as well. And they will have Bloodlust and Ashen Hallow and Wings available as well. Obey Alliance do not have those buttons available for their comp. So if Ambition can use those to their advantage, maybe they can claw back this extra boss health difference between the two teams. Right now, something like 20 seconds of advantage towards Obey Alliance. Let's see if Ambition can claw that back, though. As you can see, every single cooldown in the game is being used by both teams here to just try and kill this boss as quickly as possible.
It looked like 40 was not able to use his Shadow Melt to skip that exile, so he was actually sent down pretty early, and it took them quite a while to get that Fleshcrafter up. It looked like he was not snapping up to them for quite a while, but now they do have it up on both sides, but they have to claw through the HP of the Fleshcrafter too, because not only do they need to kill the boss, they also need to kill the Fleshcrafter. Astronaut going down for Ambition, that's going to be 5 seconds on the board. They need to use a Battle Rest to get him back up, and those 5 seconds might actually matter. The Fleshcrafter's a little bit lower for Ambition, so they have to go through less HP compared to Obey Alliance, but Obey Alliance is just so much lower on the boss, because they reached that boss much quicker and they had that extra weapon.
Yeah, they are doing such a good job here. The timer will not end when the boss dies, however. They have to finish off that Fleshcrafter as well, so they need to make sure that they don't let up now, and you can see they're AoEing everything down. The boss is going to die here, and so is that Fleshcrafter. The timer stops, and Obey Alliance have earned their ticket to the Global Finals.
Game number 1 between Echo and Reload Esports starts right now here in theater, or in Necrotic Quake. Ah!
So close to
oh, man! Killing
It was
me.
so good until that point. All right.
There's a pothole for Jack.
Alright, we see Echo and Reload Esports doing an insanely big pull on both sides, actually. Both pulling the boss and also pulling in a lot of the trash mobs here. It looks like neither of the teams actually did pull Incinerator just yet. So they want to finish up the mobs, then they move over to the Goliath, activate it with the Kyrian Covenant, pick up the orbs, then they're going to be pulling Incinerator. You can see Gingy already making his way over there, did tag it just now, and then they want to just use those orbs to make sure that AoE pulsing damage is going to help them to deal with the Incinerator. And it looks like both of the teams did execute that first part of the boss pull and the trash perfectly. So good job on both the teams. They're going to be pulling some more trash on top of the boss in just in a second though.
Yeah, and they notably, like, this should be a pretty high healing check for the tanks on the side of Reload Esports. They need a lot of defensives, but and since they're out of their defensives, it should be dangerous. However, whenever your whole entire group is stacked up, just the healing from those Goliath orbs, it's absolutely, like, it is a lot of healing that is going straight into your tank, and so you're able to keep them topped up. Reload Esports had one of those Vanguards alive for just a little bit longer than the side of Echo, and I think that's going to result in just a little bit more damage on Blightbone because of having that mob left alive just a slight bit longer. And now Reload Esports is grabbing some of these Blight bags, while Echo here is positioning to grab these soldiers and all of these the Corpse Collector and Caster mobs off of that little landing area. The Corpse Harvester needs to make sure that it gets interrupted on CD as well as the Incinerator, and Echo makes very quick work of that first pull and that first boss.
Yeah, so Echo definitely managed to somehow gather a lot more single target damage in comparison to Reload Esports. Reload Esports is struggling a bit at the end of this boss fight as they're dropping incredibly low from some of the residual damage that is happening here. Actually, their Shadow Priest and their Rogue going down. They will be able to release and get back because the boss is down, but that is already 10 seconds in comparison to Echo, and Echo's just blasting through this. They're picking up their second Goliath orbs here, and Malik's still struggling to stay alive with the last couple of mobs that you still have left there.
I think their Goliath orbs fell off a little bit earlier than they normally do because they were slightly slower. It's like I was talking about earlier. It's just a cascading effect of things happen, and then your pull goes a little bit slower. Then they no longer have the Goliath orbs for that trash pack. But Echo pick up their Goliath orbs from that one mob, from that one Goliath that's off to the side there, and here they have pulled all of their trash into Narzuda. This is a really dangerous pull for Necrotic, or not Necrotic, for Sanguine, as you have that Narzuda mob casting the Necrotic bolt over and over again, but Echo make very quick work of that pack. I think now ended up using one of his silence orbs that you get as well, and that actually allowed Echo to be able to kite all of the mobs around to drop Sanguine in a perfect point, and now they are preparing to get their third set of the Goliath orbs. Where Reload Esports, they're taking a route that only they have been taking, where they're shrouding around that Narzuda trash, and they're not going to be playing any of that. Instead, they're going to be playing just like the Skeletal Monstrosity and some of the other mobs in this area to be able to get their count, as opposed to playing Narzuda.
Yeah, it looks like Echo did send Fragments over to the boss, activating that RP event. So he's going to come back in just a second. Maybe Clix is going to grip him down so he can help the team to kill off that Necromancer. There we go. He is jumping. You can see him in the top
grip.
right corner. There we go. Clix trying to grip him. Didn't
Somebody
just
grab
get.
our friend.
There we go. There we go. He did manage to get back. Now they're activating the orb too, so everyone is picking up that buff as well. And then they're probably going to gather up a substantial pull in just a moment.
Yeah, and look at this. Reload Esports have already started their massive pull. Angler gets hit by a frontal, but is able to be topped back up. You see him immediately popping his cloak, and now Reload Esports needs to kite all of these mobs away from the Sanguine. That Bone Reaver, they do not want to get that mob stuck in Sanguine because of the insane amount of HP that it has. Just being stuck in that Sanguine would be terrible for Reload Esports, and right on time. They get that pull dealt with almost perfectly, and they're at 65% enemy forces count. Of course, they do have 2 deaths on the board, which is not great for them. And then Echo, they end up dealing with one of the Necromancers with using their Goliath orbs to deal with that. And oh my goodness, this is something that we haven't seen before. Executioner of Varuth gets pulled at 100% HP into a mark. That is something that we never see teams do.
We actually did see that before from Obey Alliance, even though it wasn't a 22 Tyrannical. Obey Alliance was having this really impressive strategy where they used those orbs, because they still have the orbs from the Goliath, right? Mm-hmm. And it allowed them to pull Varuth into the boss. But Echo did commit a weapon here. You see Varuth died incredibly quickly. That's because Now did use, I believe it was a spear or an orb, not sure. One of those 2 weapons were committed by Now to make sure this pull works out for them. And this is really good because you don't waste this time single targeting down Varuth. But they're struggling a little bit. Gingy proccing that Cauterize here. He is actually playing Fire Mage on both of the sides, but everyone just dropping so low. Sally has a hard time to recover this pull because everyone dropped so low with that initial 50% healing reduction aura that they had applied to them from Varuth. And now, slowly, Sally is managing to heal everyone back up. But the Ashen is down, the wings are down, so everyone is still just struggling.
Yeah, and Reload Esports, their Holy Paladin does have access to that Ashen Hollow. You saw it come out right as Varuth started to get low and they engaged Amarth. They do also have these corpse mobs on top of Amarth as well, in addition to the other ads that Amarth does summon. They need to make sure that they get the ads killed off first and foremost, and then those other warriors and whatnot, they can kind of die secondarily. It's not that big of a deal. And so now Reload Esports and Echo are both at the exact same enemy forces count, but Echo's strategy for how they were getting that second Goliath, just a little bit difference in their routing, is going to propel them into the lead, especially whenever you have to factor in that there is the 10 seconds of death differential also.
Yeah, definitely. Echo finishing off Amarth quite a bit faster compared to Reload Esports. They're still at 45% on the boss, and they have to worry about even finishing this off because if you guys remember, they actually had some issues with the Marth before, and they wiped this boss multiple times in a row, and it doesn't look too great because the boss is still pretty high HP, and Anchor dropping incredibly low, no cheat death available. He does use Cloak of Shadows to be able to survive the damage incoming, but there's just so much damage, and Echo having an easier time because they actually committed a weapon, right? So Reload Esports is going to have an advantage later on because they still have that spear that Echo actually committed to that boss, but it's not going to be worth it if they struggle so much on this boss and they have to commit so much. So hopefully they can finish it off in just a second, but Echo already gathering up that first initial Necropolis pull, and Fragments does go down. They do have a Battle Rush available, but they're not using it. Fragments did actually release, and a lot of Sanguine heals going off on these creations as well.
Yeah, those mobs were just absolutely bathing in that Sanguine. Now you have to be looking at Now's HP. He has 4 stacks of that Mutilate debuff as he's starting to kite frantically around the room, trying to get a reset. Okay, so now he's continuing to leap away. Frag has joined back into the group. All of these Stitchworks are just at 30% HP due to that Sanguine healing. Now did end up getting a reset on that Mutilate debuff.
Don't cheat that.
But, okay, so they do still have 2 Corpse Collectors just throwing flesh in the background. This is so scary for Echo. They need to make sure that they're continuing to get kicks on these Corpse Collectors. Both of them are going to be dying here in just a second. It looks like Echo may be able to recover this back. Oh, one of the casts goes off.
Everyone does a diva, everyone drops incredibly low. Clicks goes down. Actually, now it's just trying to survive. He's just kiting for his life as he doesn't have cheat death available, and this tenderized stacks just kept stacking up. He did manage to reset the tenderized stacks, but he's still just getting mutilated by all of these creations and the Stitchworks that are still alive. Now he finally did manage to recover a little, and they did manage to finish off one of the Stitchworks. So it should be able to have recovered at this point. No more panic, but now they also have 2 deaths on the board. So that means they're going to be completely even with time compared to Reload Esports. And Reload Esports, they didn't have that many issues on that pull. You can see they only have the Stitchwork left, and then they're going to be even in the whole dungeon. This is so close between those 2 teams.
Yeah, Reload Esports had a medium amount of Sanguine healing, while Echo had a lot of Sanguine healing. I think was the biggest differential between these 2 teams. And so Reload Esports able to get down those Stitchworks and put themselves even in count with Echo here. Now they are both making their way into that first little area of the Trash Gauntlet where you have this double assistant spawning. And now it's just going to be kind of a damage race. I think that all things considered, whenever Echo had those problems there with that pull, that kind of evened up everything. So now I think that both of these teams are back at square one and at the exact same point as one another.
Yeah, I definitely agree. You gotta be really careful that there's no Sanguine heal going off on these assistants. It looks like Echo did execute this properly, but Marky is going down for Reload Esports as it looked like he got a fixate, and maybe there was some miscommunication with Bob from the Paladin. Maybe he was supposed to get bopped and it didn't go off or was on cooldown, or Dispersion was pressed too late. Either way, they did not manage to get rid of this fixate. Shadow Melt also was not available for Marky, so he couldn't get the fixate off of him. So definitely another time loss for Reload, as Echo is already fighting that next trash pack.
Yeah, being able to go a little bit faster. Gore Grind is dropping really low. This is the sub-rogue kind of pull, where you have all of these Gore Grind bits. They don't give count, so they're basically just mobs that you don't really worry about. They do drop Sanguine, though, so you don't want to kill them before you end up killing Gore Grind. Oh, no, and Gore Grind was standing inside of a Sanguine puddle there from one of those bits, and this is just a pull for Frag. He's literally sitting there, making sure he's spamming Shuriken Storm and Eviscerate, trying to DPS Gore Grind as much as possible. They are also utilizing that Flesh Crafter to its fullest potential to be able to lob those cleavers into those big mobs. And that's an absolutely great tactic in this area. But the downside is if it hits either the bits or the leftovers or whatever those like smaller mobs are, then they can have a problem where the small mobs die a little bit early, and then you have either Goregrind or Rotspew like standing inside of Sanguine. And Reload Esports, they do not have that problem. They have no Sanguine healing, so they're trying to catch back up a little bit. Only 50% of the HP between Rotspew separates these 2 teams as it currently stands.
Yeah, we have to keep in mind that even though Reload Esports is behind in the dungeon at this point, I do believe they do have an additional spear available to them, and Echo does not, because they did use it on Amarth and Baruth. So if Reload Esports does still have that spear, I think it is on Marky, then they can maybe catch up on the boss DPS because of it. We'll see how that goes, as Echo is now finishing off that last pack and the last Flash Crafter. as they're going to be waiting for that boss to spawn in just a second. Flashcrafter is just getting sheeped in the back, making sure that the cleaver goes off as soon as the boss comes down.
Yeah, but Echo already engaging Surge and Stitch Flesh. That creation is coming out. This fight, we've seen a lot of issues with just the hook and how you're dealing with the Fleshcrafter on this fight. This Fleshcrafter is really annoying and can get in your way. In addition to that, with how much damage you need to commit into Stitch Flesh, we've seen teams get up to sometimes 3 creations at once, and once you have multiple creations out, sometimes they'll do this thing where they accidentally hook one another, and that absolutely cannot happen for Echo. And you do see Surge and Stitch Flesh, all of the cooldowns are being popped into it. You do even have that Ashen Hollow being thrown out as well. Surge and Stitch Flesh will probably go back upstairs into another phase here in a second. They need to make sure that this creation gets the hook, pulls Stitch Flesh off of that platform, and then they kill off him before the second or the third creation spawns. You can kind of deal with 2 creations at once for a little bit, but it is very dangerous. So they're on a timer here.
Yeah, and it looked like Reload Esports did commit that Ashen earlier in a trash pack, so that it won't have it for this boss. They will have it for the last boss, but maybe that is too little too late, as Echo is already getting incredibly low on Stitch Flash. They need to get that boss below, I believe, 5% though, before he jumps up, because below 5% he won't jump anymore. Looks like they actually committed a weapon there at the very end, maybe a hammer it looked like, because the boss dropped really low all of a sudden. So maybe they were just making sure that the boss doesn't jump up again, committing that hammer. But now they're already on their way to the last boss. They still have that Flashcrafter that is going to snap up in just a second, helping them to DPS the boss. They do have Bloodlust, no Ashen though, and I'm not sure if they still have a lot of weapons left. There might be 1 or 2 hammers, but probably no more spears available for Echo. Reload Esports are doing a good job as well to finish off Surge and Stitch Flash, but they're pretty behind at this point. The only way to actually win it for Reload Esports is to finish off this boss quick, and then if they have any weapons left, then they have to throw them at the boss really fast to make up all of that damage, all of the time that they're behind at this point.
And they have to overkill this boss by 5 seconds as well. It's not just kill it before Echo, it's kill it 5 seconds before Echo. In addition to that, both of these teams have to get that Fleshcrafter killed off as well. Echo's Fleshcrafter is starting to dip pretty low, which Genji can heal it up with Polymorph. It's just not something that you really want to be spending globals on. But with that Fleshcrafter, somewhere below 20% HP, it may have to happen because they need those throw cleavers to do a significant portion of this boss's damage on a 22 Tyrannical.
And Jinji has been exiled for a long time. I'm not sure if he didn't suicide, so he's trying to kill that Et, but he's just now came back up. They have been holding on to this Bloodlust for a long time. They have to commit that last at some point, as the Flashcraft is just dropping lower and lower. Jinji could cheap it if they choose to do so. Bloodlust being popped now, Combustion coming back up for Jinji as well. Reload Esports popped that Bloodlust, but Ankler had to go down, being exiled, so he's not getting the benefit of that Bloodlust for him. You can see Reload Esports did catch up on the boss DPS quite a lot though. You can see they're now lower than Echo, but keep in mind they're 5 seconds behind.
Yeah, I think it's just that difference of that Ashen Hollow. They're not cooldowning for Ankler. That Bloodlust is not for him. It is for that Holy Paladin. Ooh, and now Echo, with just better use of that Fleshcrafter, are continuing to get more damage into Nalthor, and they're starting to even pass Reload Esports by a significant amount there. Their Bloodlust more optimized for the group's damage as opposed to just the individual Holy Paladin damage, and it looks like Echo Esports Echo is going to be able to take this first map against Reload Esports.
Yeah, the boss is going low and lower. They still have to finish off that Flashcrafter, but yeah, they all of a sudden got so far ahead with that boss DPS, throwing that Bloodlust running there. Finishing off the Flashcrafter in just a second, and there it is. Echo with a 15-minute 44 clear of Necrotic Wake, winning that first dungeon against Reload Esports.